You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's mini show, we're going to be looking at players who are struggling at the moment, and I think they have a chance of turning it around to some degree, therefore making them buy low players. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed. Now, when I say buy low, of course, what it means is you're looking at these players at a real low point of their value, thinking that, in the majority of cases, they're going to be able to turn it around. So if you do acquire them in a trade, you'll be getting them at a cheaper price than what you may get in a month's time. Now, many people, when I do their shows, Josh, can you give us specific examples? Which player would you send away to get this guy? And it doesn't really work that way because I could throw out any sort of name. You may not have that player on your roster, so that's not going to work for you anyway. So me being specific and say send this player for this player is not how fantasy basketball trades work. It's not how this sort of advice is going to be helpful, because it's going to be helpful to 1 out of 20 people maybe if I say that one name for that player, because you're not going to have them on their roster, but it's all about how it makes sense on your team as well. So bear that in mind when making these decisions. Some of these guys, maybe they don't actually get back to the value they had before. That's something that I'll address when talking about these players individually, but this is a low point in their value, and it is worth at least exploring because people are very reactionary. We know that recency bias is a huge thing. It seems to be getting more and more prevalent as each year goes by. So being able to target recency bias and people's extreme reactions to bad performances is a way that you can acquire value onto your fantasy basketball team a lot of the time. Let's start with a bloke who headlined this show last week, and that is Lauri Markkanen. It's still been pretty shit from Markkanen. He did have one big game against the Pistons where he had 24 and 6 with 2 blocks, but since then it's been pretty rough. Just 22 points combined over his last 3 games. He hasn't played 30 minutes a night since the 16th of November, where he had a double-double against the Brooklyn Nets. He is just way off in his confidence. Now, he is the 139th ranked player over the course of the season, and for those of you that ask where the rankings come from, they are from basketballmonster.com. They are 8-category rankings. They are per-game rankings for the season. That is the standard that I use, and that is the standard that you should always be using when discussing these things. If your league includes 3-point percentage, that's a different thing. Assist-to-turnover ratio, it's going to skew all that, but the bulk of leagues, this is what is relevant in terms of ranking. And even then, ranking numbers have significant limitations, which I've discussed plenty of times. But 139th on the season, most importantly, under 30 minutes a night, under 36% from the field, and only 81 from the line. Let's harken back to the first 2 years of Markkanen's career. 43% from the field, both years. 84 and 87 from the line. So right there, you can see the room for him to improve. His first 2 seasons, 36% three-point shooter. This year, 28%. Now, I'm not looking at him and going, well, he is going to get back to being that 55 true shooting guy that he was in both of his first 2 seasons, because maybe he won't. Maybe this oblique issue is really bothering him. But I have a fair feeling that he's going to be better than 50%. Will he be able to get back to 36% from 3? Maybe not. Will he be able to get back to 43 from the field and 49% from 2? Maybe not, but he should be able to get better than 42%, which is where he's currently sitting. I don't care about his steals and blocks. You didn't draft him for steals and blocks. He's never going to get them. He's never going to get assists. But what we're going to see, hopefully, is that injury heals up and a bit more confidence comes back. That leads to 1, 2, 3, 4 extra minutes per game. It leads to him hitting, instead of 36% of his shots, 41% of his shots. Instead of 28% of his threes, 34% of his threes. His points go up. His three-pointers go up. His field goal percentage isn't as much of a negative. He gets more confidence. He plays more minutes, and all those things come together. Now, he's been dreadful. Jim Boylen has also been dreadful. I don't believe that Boylen makes out the season, and maybe that does help Markkanen as well. But it is dual blame between him and Boylen as to who is causing this problem. I think that they can be fixed. I think both things can be fixed, and that will lead to an improvement. And you can get him off the waiver wire now. This is when we're talking buy low. You throw your worst player at whoever's got Markkanen, and you might be able to get him back in a trade. That is what we're talking about when we're talking about buy low options. The next guy I want to talk about is the tank, Tom Bryant of the Washington Wizards. He is, over the course of the season, the 73rd ranked player, but over the last 2 weeks, he's 126th because the minutes have dropped, just 27 a night. He has had some foul trouble in that time. The shooting is still good, 61% from the field, but what has happened is he's not blocking shots during that time frame. The minutes are down and his free throws have fallen way off. He was a 78% free throw shooter last year. He's at 67% over his last 6 games. You add those two things in, plus an additional 2 or 3 minutes a game, and he shoots back up into that top 60 type of range. So at the moment, Mo Wagner is taking minutes from him. I believe they will start to play together, but there is also a bit of a confidence issue happening with Bryant here, and you can see that in free throws as they have fallen off pretty considerably. They will jump back up. I think his minutes will jump back up. You can get him at a bit of a discount compared to where he was at the start of the season, or where he's even been, like 73rd overall this year, and that includes these last 2 weeks of really struggling. I think he can get back to that top 60, top 65 type area that he's been in. Blake Griffin's the next guy I want to talk about. Might seem weird to have him as a bit of a buy low guy, but I do believe that's the case, because over the course of the season, he's playing 30 minutes a game. It's only been 5 games, but he's 122nd. The shot isn't really going in that well. The rebounds are significantly lower than last year. He's getting no defensive numbers, which is pretty usual. But what's also happening is he's hitting 24% of his threes. Now, Griffin will be significantly better than that. He's a 36 guy last year, 35 the year before that, 34 the year before that, 33 the year before that. So maybe we're expecting him to get to 37 this year, if all that pattern holds. He will be better than this. The minutes are starting to ramp up, but the shot just isn't going in for Griffin at the moment. So there is room to improve. The other thing is he's only averaging 3.6 assists. And this is a guy that's been at close to 5.5 or 6 assists in each of the last 2 seasons. So there is massive room for him to get better. Don't look at him as a top 30 guy or a top 40 guy. He's probably in a top 70 is where we're looking at for Griffin for the rest of this season, would be my guess. And you might be able to send 2 guys around the 90 to 110 type range to get him back in a deal. And I think that would be a fair sort of deal to try and do. Look at your 10th best player and your 11th best player. Try them straight up. Try them combined. That's the sort of deal I'd be looking for Griffin. But there are some significant indicators there. Even though there are injury concerns, this is a low point in what Griffin can do. And there are certain things there which you think aren't going to stick at the level they're at. Next up is Joelle Mbita, and people are pissed after Embiid's performance yesterday against the Raptors, where he scored 0 points. I have had multiple people comment on things, send me DMs. The manager in my league just wants to get Embiid off his team. Just wants him off his team because of yesterday's performance. This guy is garbage. Get rid of him. It seems pretty wild for a bloke averaging 21 and 12 and still with room to improve. Only 77% from the line, shooting just 45% from the field, given he's been a 48 guy each of the last 2 years. Only 1.4 blocks, considering he's blocked 2 a game over the last 2 years. There is significant room to him to get better. He played in the back-to-back over the weekend. He's still the 29th ranked player, and that is nowhere near where we thought he'd be this year. We thought he'd take a step up. The free throw rate is down from him as well. 7 free throws versus 10 a game last year. That is a big drop-off for Embiid. So if we can get him hitting his free throws, getting to the line more, getting the blocks back up, and then also hitting his shots at a higher rate, where he's only at 49% from 2 when he was at 54 last year. They are clear indicators, and today is the time to strike. People are pissed about him scoring 0 points against the Raptors. And I'm telling you, the vitriol at a bloke who's averaging 21 and 12 based on one performance is astounding to me. That's where you come in, you throw your top 50 bloke at him, and you see what you get back. You see whether you can do that, because that is exactly what I would be doing in this situation, given the fact that this is a low point in Embiid's season. Another guy I've got here, Damian Lillard. This might seem a weird one, but Lillard, over the course of the year, is the 6th ranked player. He's 40th over the last 2 weeks. Last game, Carmelo Anthony really took the ball out of his hands and started shooting more than him. Why is he so low lately? The shots aren't going in. 31% from the field over the last 6 games. 18 points. 0.8 steals. They are not good numbers from Lillard. 28% from 3. They are going to bounce back. Now, you aren't going to be able to go super low on Lillard, but he is going back to being... He will be a first-round guy. So if you can trade him off for 2 fourth-rounders type area, a third-round player... That's what you should be at least investigating, especially if the person that has him is a Mallow believer. Lillard's cooked, man. Mallow's here. He's going to take these shots. It's all over for Lillard. It's not. In the last game, it was the shots, but it's not just that. It's the fact that the percentage is way down. Now, I talked about Lillard at the start of the season, how I did think that his usage would go down this year. That has played out exactly as I thought it would. The efficiency was up to begin the year. It was always going to come back down. It's going to come back up at some point. So it's about ebbs and flows in terms of looking at value. And Lillard, I think, is a buy low, but not an extreme buy low. Maybe at some point I'm going to take Mike Conley off this list. That is not this point. He is bad this year, 156, 31 minutes. That's all right. But the fact is, 24 usage is down from the 28 he was last year. Makes sense when you're playing with Donovan Mitchell versus when you're playing with, can't even think, Bruno Caboclo, who was running that team at the end for the Grizzlies. But the things that are concerning are the shooting numbers. 37% over the course of the season, 79 from the line. This is a bloke who was 44 and 85 and hasn't shot under 80% from the free throw line in forever. So that is likely to come back. Even if it's 2 or 3%, it makes a difference. The three-point shooting, 35%, well, that's about right. Like, that's the sort of what he does. He just can't get the twos to go. The floaters aren't working. 39% on two-point attempts. It's horrible. 48 last year, 44 the year before that, 50 the year before that. There is massive room for that to improve. Now, I don't expect the assists to jump back up to being sky high, although he's at 5.7 over the last 2 weeks, which is in line with his Memphis numbers. He's never been a high assist player. His steals are actually comically low. This is a bloke that I feel, 5-6 years ago was a 2 steals a game guy and has been solidly in the 1.3 steals per game range. He's at 0.8. You bump that up to 1.3, you get your field goals up to 43%, you get your free throws up to 82%, all things that are legitimately possible, and he jumps back into the top 80 pretty comfortably. Now, all those things have to happen, but it doesn't take a huge stretch of your imagination to see those things actually going on with Conley and him not remaining one of the worst shooters in the NBA, which he currently is looking like. Mitch Robinson has been not good.
Mitch Robinson says, I'll take it from here.
He's not taking anything. The only thing he's taking is trips to the bench. He's starting behind Taj Gibson. David Fizdale, we know he's really bad. We know he's a terrible coach, and his decision-making on a game-to-game basis, on a play-to-play basis, on literally on what side of his pants his dick is going to sit. Like, he gets that wrong every day as well. But at some point, it's going to come good for Robinson. He is still, in 19 minutes a game, the 95th ranked player so far this season. In 19 minutes. Push that to 25, which is a stretch, but push it to 25, and you got back top 50 value. Right, he's still blocking 2 shots a game in 18 minutes. He's still shooting 73% from the field. He's actually shooting 72% from the line, so that's an improvement from where it was last year. He's grabbing 6 rebounds per game. These numbers are all in line with his per 36s from last season. They're almost identical. He cannot stay out of foul trouble, and he's being poorly coached. One of those things can change. One of those things may change. If both of them change, then hello, here we go. This is your opportunity to, again, maybe it doesn't change for Robinson. Maybe he just stays in an 18-minute role. That is horrible from Fizdale, especially when, look, there has been foul trouble, but he should be able to play through more than what he's playing through it. Yes, he fouled out last game in 19 minutes. The game before, he had 2 fouls in 24 minutes. Look, that's not on. And that's where he should be coming. But he still has had 4, 3, 2, and 3 blocks in the last 4 games. That's enough value there in itself. And at some point, we saw at the end of last year, he had a stretch of games, 31, 37, 33, 34, 28, 38, 35, and 23 minutes. That's how he ended last season. So it can happen. He can do it. He can play through it. Let's see when Fizdale comes to his senses. But when that happens, then the numbers are going to absolutely go through the roof. Let's look at the next guy, Montes Sabonis of the Indiana Pacers. Over the last 2 weeks, he's the 68th ranked player, and that might not seem like much of a buy low, but he's 33rd over the course of the season. 17 points, and the reason he is down so far is this is a bloke who was at 59% from the field last year. He's down at 47% over the last 2 weeks. So his efficiency, which I did think would fall off this year, playing more power forward than center, and that has been the case. I don't think it's going to stick at this low level, so there is room for that to come back up. His defensive numbers, of course, are comically low. But it's his shooting numbers that are the worry here, or the reason that has caused him to fall down. 63 true shooting last year, 53 the last 6 games. That's where you go, well, even if it falls somewhere in the middle, then we're jumping back up into top 40 consideration. So he's a soft buy low, but he is a buy low nonetheless because those last couple of games haven't been great. And the last bloke I want to talk about is another big man. And unfortunately, I have to talk about David Fizdale again because Julius Randle has not been good. Now, he is an absolutely tough watch. Those horrible spin moves, bad shots, stripped balls on turnovers. They're trying to play him like a point guard when he can't do it. He is the 149th ranked player this season. He's playing more minutes and scoring fewer points. His efficiency is absolutely in the toilet. He has been a 71+% free throw guy for each of the last 4 years. He is at 61%. So that has massive room to improve. He is not a good three-point shooter, so don't care about that. But 56 and 58 from two-point range the last 2 years, 50 this season. Like there is a massive room for that to improve. The steals, don't worry about it. The blocks, don't worry about it. They're never coming. That's not why you had him. You had him because you wanted that field goal percentage, which was strong. The big points and rebounds. The minutes are still fine, 33 a game. 25 usage is actually lower than last year, and that's fine. He's not as good as people made him out to be last year, but he is significantly better than what he is here. And if those percentages turn around, which I think they've got a chance to do, then we're looking at top 80, top 90 sort of a player. So I think getting him at this type of an area where people are pissed with him, and Knicks fans literally want him out of the rotation. I don't think they should go that far. He is not a star. It's simple as that. But he's not an out of the rotation guy. But this is a real low point in his value. Follow me on Twitter at redrock_bball, Instagram Locked On Fantasy Basketball, and subscribe to this podcast. Tell your friends, subscribe, 5-star ratings, reviews, thumbs up, and on YouTube, of course, give me a comment down below. Hey, if anyone is listening to this podcast and you live in Switzerland, could you please leave a comment on the video or tweet at me? I have some questions. I'm going to be heading to Switzerland next year, and I have some questions to ask you. So if you do live in Switzerland, or if you've been to Switzerland multiple times, or know a lot about Switzerland, let me know. That is a weird way to end this show, but guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.